to the expedition leader Professor S.A. Jordan. Numerous of Oriental or possibly Egyptian origin, according to the expedition leader Professor S.A. Jordan. Numerous artifacts were found, including copper implements as hard as steel. The Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. has ensured these finds remain unknown to the public. That's its job. And no one would have known about this discovery had it not been for 2 articles in a local newspaper, the Arizona Gazette, in April 1909. The researcher and author, John Rhodes, claims to have located this site, and he connects it with Sapapuni, the underground world from where the Hopi Indians claim to have originated. According to their legends, the Hopi once lived within the earth and were fed and clothed by ant people, possibly the extraterrestrials known as the Greys. The Hopi refer to their ancestors as their snake brothers, and their most sacred of underground rituals is the snake dance. As I will keep emphasizing, not all reptilians are of malevolent intent, and I have no wish to demonize the reptile stream. We are talking here only of one group of them. The Hopi say that one day, under the orders of their goddess, Spider Woman, they ascended to the surface of the earth and emerged through their cave they called the Sapapuni. Once on the outside, the Hopi say, a mockingbird arrived to confuse their language and make different tribes speak different tongues. This is such a repeat of the biblical story of the Tower of Babel that a connection is obvious. To this day, the Hopi will not recreate the images of their snake ancestors for fear of death. The layout of the underground world discovered in Arizona was described by G. Kincaid as a mammoth chamber from which radiate scores of passageways like the spokes of a wheel. This is also how the modern reptilian underground base at Dulce, New Mexico is described, and concentric circles of people, compartmentalizing different levels of knowledge, is the structure by which the global brotherhood manipulate the world. Arizona, New Mexico, and the Four Corners area, where the states of Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico all meet, are some of the most important regions on Earth for reptilian underground bases. But underground worlds and cities, ancient and modern, abound all over the planet. There are eyewitness reports of giant humanoids sighted in the Hal Saflieni catacombs in Malta during the 1930s, which were closed after a party of schoolchildren and their guide disappeared. More than 30 vast ancient tunnel complexes and underground cities have been found near Derinkuya in Turkey. The list goes on and on. The mysterious creature known as the Bigfoot, a large hairy ape-like creature, is allegedly from within the earth. There is a widespread belief among UFO researchers that there are reptilian underground bases where they work with their reptile-human crossbreed elite, and I have spoken to former CIA employees who confirm this. A reptilian race definitely live within this planet in a physical form, and the only question is whether they are native to the Earth or if they originate elsewhere. Again, it is probably both, a mixture of the two. Other dimensional. My own research suggests that it is from another dimension, the lower 4th dimension, that the reptilian control and manipulation is primarily orchestrated. Without understanding the multidimensional nature of life and the universe, it is impossible to follow the manipulation of the Earth by a non-human force. As open-minded scientists are now confirming, creation consists of an infinite number of frequencies or dimensions of life sharing the same space in the same way that radio and television frequencies do. At the moment you are tuned to the 3-dimensional world, or 3rd dimension, and so that is what you perceive as your reality. You are tuned to this station, in other words. But, as with radio and television, all the other stations are broadcasting at the same time, and if you move your radio dial or change the TV channel, you can connect with them. When you do this, the station or channel you were tuned to before does not disappear. It continues to broadcast, but you can't hear it or see it anymore because you are no longer on its wavelength. So it is with human consciousness. Some people, everyone if the truth be told, can tune their consciousness to other wavelengths and connect with information and consciousness operating on that frequency. We call this psychic power, but it is merely the ability to move your dial to another station. It is from one of these other stations or dimensions that the serpent race, the Anunnaki, is controlling this world by possessing certain bloodline streams. But as my research continues, it is clear that the 4th-dimensional reptilian controllers are themselves controlled by 5th-dimensional entities. Where does it end? Who the hell knows? Yeah, I know it sounds off the wall, but the truth usually does. You can put the book down now if it is too much to take, but you need to read it all to see what enormous evidence there is that this is true. The station from which the reptilians operate is the lower level of the 4th dimension, the one closest to this physical world. Other people know this as the lower astral dimension, the legendary home of demons and malevolent entities going back to antiquity. It is from here that today's Satanists summon their demonic entities and their black magic rituals. they are actually summoning the reptilians of the lower fourth dimension. It is suggested by some researchers, with good reason, that the non-physical reptilians were able to pour into this dimension through holes or portals in the time-space fabric caused by the nuclear tests and explosions which started in the deserts of New Mexico in the early 1940s. But I think such holes began to be created a long time ago, before the cataclysms, when the world was at an even more advanced technological stage than it is today. The reptilian control of planet Earth involves all three of the above themes. I think the reptilian genetic stream operates throughout the universe and they are not all malevolent, far from it. As with humanity, they contain the whole spectrum of attitudes from love to hate, freedom to control. I am identifying a particular group of them, not the whole species. I cannot emphasize this enough. This controlling group came here from the Draco constellation and elsewhere, and this is the origin of terms like draconian, a word which sums up their attitudes and agenda. They love to consume human blood, and they are the blood-sucking demons of legend. The vampire stories are symbolic of this, and what is the name of the most famous vampire? Count Dracula. The Count symbolizes the aristocratic reptile-human crossbreed bloodlines which the reptilians possess from the lower fourth dimension, and Dracula is an obvious reference again to Draco. The recent reports of the blood-sucking chupacabra in Puerto Rico, Mexico, Florida, and the Pacific Northwest fit the reptilian description. They have been seen sucking the blood of domestic livestock like goats, and their name means goat sucker. The reptilians operate a pincer movement on the human race. Their physical expression lives under the ground and interacts in the underground bases with human and human-reptile crossbreed scientists and military leaders. They also emerge to engage in some human abductions. But the main control comes by outright possession. The crossbreeding program, via sex and test tube, is described in the Sumerian tablets and the Old Testament, the sons of God who interbred with the daughters of men. These hybrid human-reptile lines carry the reptilian genetic code and thus can be far more easily possessed by the reptilians of the lower fourth dimension. As we shall see, these bloodlines became the British and European aristocracy and royal families, and, thanks to the Great British Empire, they were exported across the world to rule the Americas, Africa, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and so on. These genetic lines are manipulated into the positions of political, military, media, banking, and business power, and thus these positions are held by lower fourth dimensional reptilians hiding behind a human form or by mind puppets of these same creatures. They operate through all races, but predominantly the white one. As is well acknowledged, there is an area of the human brain to this day known as the reptile brain. Within the brain is the original segment to which all other parts are additions. And, according to the neuroanatomist, Paul MacLean, this ancient area of the brain is driven by another prehistoric segment which some neuroanatomists call the R complex. R is short for reptilian because we share this with reptiles. MacLean says that this R complex plays an important role in aggressive behavior, territoriality, ritualism, and establishment of social hierarchies. This is precisely the behavior patterns of reptilians and their reptile-human hybrids as exposed in this book. The astronomer, Carl Sagan, knew far more than he ever made public, and indeed he spent much of his career guiding people away from the truth. But his knowledge of the true situation occasionally came through, as when he said that it does no good whatsoever to ignore the reptilian component of human nature, particularly our ritualistic and hierarchical behavior. On the contrary, the model may help us understand what human beings are all about. Plus, he adds in his book, The Dragons of Eden, that even the negative side of human behavior is expressed in reptilian terms, as in cold-blooded killer. Sagan, the name in reverse spells the East Indian reptilian gods, the Nagas, clearly knew the score, but chose not to reveal openly what he knew. As the human fetus is forming into a baby, it goes through many stages which connect with the major evolutionary points in the development of the present physical form. These include connections with non-primate mammals, reptiles, and fish. There is a point in which the embryo develops skills. For example, the human embryo is very much like those of birds, sheep, and pigs until the 8th week, when it goes its own evolutionary way. Occasionally the genetic instructions fail to remember the latest script and some babies are born with tails. These are called caudal appendages and form in the lower lumbar region. Most are immediately removed by doctors, but in some poorer countries where such medical support is not available, there are people who live their whole lives with tails. 2-degree pheromone is the substance secreted and released by animals so they can be detected by members of the same species. The pheromones in human women and iguanas are a chemical match. Look again at those figures at the start of the first chapter detailing the number of planets and stars that exist in the fraction of creation we know about. The number of life forms in this galaxy alone is beyond imagination, and that's only at the three-dimensional level of existence. If we judge possibility, as we do, only by what we see on one little planet in one little solar system, our range of perception, imagination and vision will be so microscopic that an understanding of what is really happening to this world will be impossible. To that level of thinking, the idea that a reptile race is controlling the planet from another dimension will be so far out as to be incomprehensible. That is the way the vast majority will, at first, receive the information in this book, but the appreciation of the reptilian connection is growing among researchers who are interested in the truth and not just concerned with defending a belief system or looking for public approval. In a remarkable period of 15 days as I traveled around the United States in 1998, I met more than a dozen separate people who told me of how they had seen humans transform into reptiles and go back again in front of their eyes. 2 television presenters had just such an experience while interviewing a man who was in favor of the global centralization of power known as the New World Order. After the live interview, the male presenter said to his colleague that he had experienced an amazing sight during the interview. He had seen the man's face transform into a lizard-like creature and then return to human. His female fellow presenter was astounded because she had seen the interviewee's hands turn reptilian. The male presenter also told me of an experience a policeman friend had while making a routine visit to an office block in Aurora, near Denver, Colorado. The policeman had commented to an executive of one of the companies on the ground floor of the extreme nature of security in the building. She told him he should look at the higher floors if he wanted to know how extensive it really was. She also pointed to a lift which only went to certain floors at the top of the building and, as they chatted, she told him of something she had seen some weeks earlier. The lift had opened and a very strange figure had emerged. He was white to the point of being albino, but he had a face shaped like a lizard and his eye pupils were vertical like a reptile's. This lizard-like figure had walked out of the lift and into an official-looking car waiting outside. The policeman was so intrigued that he used his own time to check on the companies at the top of the building served by the mystery lift. He found they were all fronts for the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. Then there are the experiences of Kathy O'Brien, the mind-controlled slave of the United States government for more than 25 years, which she details in her astonishing book, Transformation of America, written with Mark Phillips. She was sexually abused as a child and an adult by a stream of famous people named in her book. About that alien-based mind programs are part of these mind control projects, and that the whole UFO extraterrestrial scene is being massively manipulated, not least through Hollywood films designed to mold public thinking. Kathy says in her book that George Lucas, the producer of Star Wars, is an operative with NASA and the National Security Agency, the parent body of the CIA. But given the evidence presented by so many other people, I don't believe that what Bush said and Kathy saw was just a mind control program. Think he was revealing the biggest secret, that a reptilian race from another dimension has been controlling the planet for thousands of years. I know other people who have seen Bush shape shift into a reptilian. The president of Mexico in the 1980s, Miguel de la Madrid, also used Kathy in her mind-controlled state. She said he told her the legend of the iguana and explained that lizard-like extraterrestrials had descended upon the Mayans in Mexico. The Mayan pyramids, their advanced astronomical technology and the sacrifice of virgins, was inspired by lizard-like aliens. He told her degree. He added that these reptilians interbred with the Mayans to produce a form of life they could inhabit. De la Madrid told Kathy that these reptile-human bloodlines could fluctuate between a human and iguana appearance through chameleon-like abilities, a perfect vehicle for transforming into world leaders, he said. De la Madrid claimed to have Mayan lizard ancestry in his blood, which allowed him to transform back to an iguana at will. He then changed before her eyes, as Bush had, and appeared to have a lizard-like tongue and eyes. Kathy understandably believed this to be another holographic projection, but was it really? Or was de la Madrid saying something very close to the truth? This theme of being like a chameleon is merely another term for shape-shifting, a theme you find throughout the ancient world and, among open-minded people, in the modern one too. Shape-shifting is the ability to use your mind to project another physical image for people to see. Everything is energy vibrating at different speeds, so if you use your mind to re-vibrate that energy to a different resonance, you can appear in any form you choose. Many witnesses have described how the so-called men in black materialize and dematerialize when they threaten people who are communicating information about extraterrestrials and UFOs. They can do this because they are interdimensional beings who can appear in any form. This is the main reason for the obsession with interbreeding among the elite bloodline families. They are seeking to maintain a genetic structure which allows them to move between dimensions and shape-shift between a human and reptilian appearance. Once the genetic structure falls too far from its reptilian origin, they can't shapeshift in this way. At NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center Mind Control Laboratory near Washington, D.C., Kathy says she was taken through another alien theme by Bill and Bob Bennett, two well-known figures in United States politics and fundamentally connected to the Brotherhood networks. After she was given mind-altering drugs, this is what she says she experienced. In the darkness around me, could hear Bill Bennett talking. This is my brother, Bob. He and work as one unit. We are alien to this dimension, two beings from another plane. The high 4S light display swirling around me convinced me, was transforming dimensions with them. A laser of light hit the black wall in front of me, which seemed to explode into a panoramic view of a White House cocktail party as though had transformed dimensions and stood amongst them. Not recognizing anyone, frantically asked, "Who are these people?" "They're not people and this isn't a spaceship," Bennett said. As he spoke, the holographic scene changed ever so slightly until the people appeared to be lizard-like aliens. Welcome to the second level of the underground. This is a mere mirror reflection of the first, an alien dimension. We are from a trans-dimensional plane that spans and encompasses all dimensions. Have taken you through my dimension as a means of establishing stronger holds on your mind than the Earth plane permits, Bill Bennett was saying. Being alien, simply make my thoughts your thoughts by projecting them into your mind. My thoughts are your thoughts. 22 Again, this might simply be a programming device, but given the other evidence I am presenting, is it not more likely that, under the effects of the drugs and other techniques, Kathy's mind had switched to the dimension in which the reptilians operate? The reptilians come from the lower fourth dimension and merely use physical bodies as their vehicles to manipulate this one. It makes sense, therefore, that if you can tune your mind to their true dimension you will see them as they really are. Kathy's descriptions mirror those of some abductees who have recalled how their extraterrestrial abductors at first looked quite human, but then changed to look like humanoid lizards. Are these people really abducted by aliens in spaceships, or are they subjected to mind control techniques like those experienced by Kathy O'Brien which connect them with the lower fourth dimension? Hunter S. Thompson in his book, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, describes seeing reptiles while in a drugged condition, and a guy I met in the United States, in those 15 days I mentioned earlier, told me a similar story. He tripped on large amounts of LSD in the 1960s, and in his seriously mind-altered state he would see some people as humans and others as humanoid lizards and other reptiles. For a while he believed that he was merely hallucinating, but as a regular tripper at high doses he began to realize that what he was seeing, usually by the third day of a 5-day trip, was not an hallucination, but the vibratory veils lifting which allowed him to see beyond the physical to the force controlling the person. In these moments the same people always had lizard features and the same people always looked human. They never switched. He also began to observe that those around him who appeared lizard-like in his altered state always seemed to react the same to movies, television programs, etc. We used to laugh and say, "Here come the lizards," he told me. He believed there was, to use his own phrase, a morphogenetic field which transmitted to the DNA of the lizard people and aligned the cell structure to the reptilian genetic blueprint. The more reptilian genes a person carries, the easier it is for this communication, or rather control, to take place. And the ones with the cell structure most aligned to the reptilian blueprint are the elite families that run the world to this day. It is not without reason that Diana, Princess of Wales, used to call the Windsors the lizards and the reptiles and said in all seriousness, "They're not human." This was told to me by a close confidant of Diana for 9 years whom I quote at length later in the book. At the end of that 15 days of meeting person after person telling me the same story of seeing humans become reptiles, I was sitting in the speaker's room at a Whole Life Expo event in Minneapolis where I was appearing and was chatting about these experiences when a gifted psychic lady said that she knew what I was talking about because she could see the reptiles inside and around the bodies of leading world politicians and the business, banking and military elite. This was possible because, as someone who had accessed her psychic sight, she could see beyond the physical and into the lower fourth dimension where these reptilians reside. What did Miguel de la Madrid say to Kathy O'Brien? The reptile-human bloodlines could fluctuate between a human and iguana appearance through chameleon-like abilities, a perfect vehicle for transforming into world leaders. This psychic lady said that most of the people in positions of power appeared to be reptiles, but there were others who were still human, and these people, she said, were overshadowed and controlled by a reptile, but they weren't actually reptiles. We would call this being possessed. This is an important distinction. There are the full-bloods who are reptilians using an apparent human form to hide their true nature, and the hybrids, the reptile-human crossbreed bloodlines, who are possessed by the reptilians from the fourth dimension. A third type are the reptilians who directly manifest in this dimension, but can't hold that state indefinitely. Some of the men in black are examples of this. Many of the possessed people will have no idea that this is so, but their thoughts are the reptilians' thoughts and they act in ways that advance the agenda without realizing the background to how and why they are being used. Leading Brotherhood families like the Rothschilds and the Windsors are full-bloods, reptilians wearing human physical bodies like an overcoat in the full knowledge of who they are and the agenda they are seeking to implement. Another comment the psychic lady made was that in her altered state of consciousness, Hillary Clinton appeared as a reptile, while her husband, Bill Clinton, the US president, was only overshadowed and controlled by one. This is interesting because my own research, and that of others, has revealed Hillary Clinton to be much higher in the hierarchy than Bill, who, while of a crossbreed bloodline, is a pawn in the game, to be used and discarded as necessary. It is not always that the most powerful people are placed in what appears to be the most powerful jobs. Often they are not. They are the string pullers of those who appear to have the power. There is another key difference between the full-bloods and the crossbreeds. Everything is created by sound. When you think or feel, you emit a wave of energy which changes the energy around you to resonate at that same vibratory level. That wave is actually a sound, broadcasting beyond the range of human hearing. Form cannot exist without sound. As you can see in a fantastic series of videos called Somatics, star for it is sound which turns matter into form. In the videos, sand and other particles are placed on a metal plate and this is vibrated by different sounds which rearrange the sand into amazing, often geometric patterns. With each change of sound the patterns change accordingly. Go back to the original sound and the original pattern returns immediately. It is like the waves that form the concentric circles of the planetary orbits around the sun I mentioned in the last chapter. The solar system is also the creation of sound. Everything is. In the beginning was the Word and the Word was sound. In the Somatics videos you see the particles form into mini planets, solar systems and galaxies, just through sound vibrations. Sound is also a wonderful form of healing because by resonating the body and its organs at their proper vibration they can be healed. Illness is dis-ease, the disharmony of the natural vibrational state of the body, and because our thoughts and emotions are actually sound waves, our imbalanced thoughts and emotions disrupt the vibrational harmony and therefore lead to dis-ease. This is how emotional stress causes illness. It is so simple. Anyway, another incredible example of all this in the Somatics videos is seeing almost human-like figures forming from the particles when certain sounds are emitted. Our bodies are also the result of sound resonating energy into form, and if our minds are powerful enough to change the sound range of the body, it moves into another form or disappears from this dimension altogether. This is what is called shape-shifting. It is not a miracle, it is science, the natural laws of creation. The full-blood reptilians of the lower fourth dimension can therefore make their human physical form disappear and bring forward their reptilian level of existence. They shape-shift. To us in this dimension they appear human, but it's just a vibrational overcoat. After the first draft of this chapter was completed I met another woman, this time in England, who had been married to a man involved in satanic ritual and the Brotherhood networks. He was headkeeper of an area of land called Burnham Beeches near the Buckinghamshire-Berkshire border a few miles from Slough, west of London. This is an ancient site mentioned in the Domesday book at the time of William the Conqueror in the 11th century, and it has a reputation for Satanism. The lady who spoke to me was taking her dog for a walk across the land at dusk in the early 1970s when she saw a figure in a long red robe. When he lifted his head, she saw that his face was that of a lizard. She obviously thought she was crazy, but this was no illusion, she said. The lizard was very real and very physical, not an apparition. She is very psychic and she later began to see people either transform into lizards before her eyes or be overshadowed by them in exactly the way described by the American psychic. If you look in the picture section you will see an artist's impression of what she sees with her psychic sight, and many others have described exactly the same experiences. On July 20, 1988, a number of people in Bishopsville, South Carolina said they were terrorized by a 7-foot-tall lizard man that had no hair, eyebrows or lips, 3 fingers on each hand and large slanted eyes that glowed red in color. There were 5 sightings of this lizard man and the story was reported in the Los Angeles Times and the Herald Examiner. When you go with the flow of life and listen to your intuition, you are shown what you need to know by the incredible synchronicity that daily surrounds you and guides You through the smoke screens and the halls of mirrors. One day in February 1998 in Johannesburg, South Africa, I spent nearly 5 hours talking with a Zulu shaman called Credo Mutwa. The word Zulu means people from the stars because they believe they are a royal race that originates beyond this planet. We talked about the global manipulation and his belief that an extraterrestrial race is behind the global brotherhood of monarchs, politicians, bankers and media owners. Afterwards I went back to the house where I was staying and wrote down the main points he mentioned on my laptop computer before going downstairs into the lounge for the evening. As I sat down, a movie was just starting. It was called The Arrival and was about a reptile-like extraterrestrial race which had taken over the planet by operating through human bodies and appearing to be human. Someone was trying to tell me something. And that something is the truth. Another lesser-known movie I saw about this time was called They Life. And again the theme was of an extraterrestrial race taking over the world by working through human physical bodies. Alien Resurrection Registered Sign was another to carry the reptilian theme with the implication that the aliens were occupying the bodies of humans. But the closest any movie has come to the truth is the American television series of the 1980s called V7. It tells of a reptile extraterrestrial race who take over the world by looking like humans. The film depicts the reptiles as being covered in some sort of latex skin, which is not how it works in reality, but the theme of the series is right on the button and a foretaste of things to come, unless we wake up fast. I highly recommend you think about watching the video of V to get a visual feel for the themes I am exposing in this book. One of the leading researchers into this phenomenon has been the American Alex Christopher, author of the books Pandora's Box, Volumes I and IT, Degree, which reveal, in part, the reptilian presence on this planet. Alex has seen reptilians and what she calls the big-eyed greys. One night in Panama City, Florida, she says she was called at 2:30 in the morning by her frantic neighbors, a woman and her partner, a commercial airline pilot. When she ran over to their house, she found the woman passing out, sliding down the wall with her eyeballs rolling. Alex said she felt an incredible energy in the room that seemed to be trying to penetrate her head. There was definitely radiation, she said, and the next day all the plants in the room were dead. She grabbed the couple and took them outside where they talked for a while. They said they had been making love when the incident began, and this is very significant because the reptilians feed off human emotional and sexual energy, which is one reason why sex is so fundamental to satanic rituals performed for the demons, this reptilian group. The couple said they saw a flash of light, and then they were pulled from the bed. The man still had a palm print on his side made by fingers that must have been 10 inches long with claws that burned into his skin. The next day that spot was so painful he couldn't touch it, and Alex Christopher has video footage of this. When the couple had calmed down and Alex went back to bed in her house, she came face to face with a reptilian herself, woke up and there is this thing standing over my bed. He had rage around yellow eyes with snake pupils and pointed ears, and a grin that wrapped around his head. He had a silvery suit on, and this scared the living daylights out of me. Threw the covers over my head and started screaming. Mean, here is this thing with a Cheshire cat grin and these funky glowing eyes. This is too much. Have seen this kind of being on more than one occasion. He had a hooked nose and was very human looking, other than his eyes, and had kind of grayish skin. A later on in 1991, one was working in a building in a large city, and had taken a break about 6 p.m. and the next thing, knew it was 10:30 p.m. and, thought, had taken a short break. Started remembering that, was taken aboard a spaceship, through 4 floors of the office building and through a roof. There on the ship is where, encountered Germans and Americans working together, and also gray aliens, and then we were taken to some other kind of facility and there, saw reptilians again. The ones, called the baby Godzillas, that have short teeth and yellow slanted eyes. The things that stick in my mind are the beings that look like reptiles, or the velociraptors. They are the cruelest beings you could ever imagine, and they even smell hideous. On the ship she remembers seeing the Germans and Americans wearing an insignia, a blue triangle with a red-eyed dragon and circle around it. A contact later told her that she saw the same symbol at Fort Walden in the United States. A winged serpent symbol could also be seen on the sleeve of an Israeli soldier as he comforted the daughter of the assassinated Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin, at her father's funeral in 1995. See Newsweek, November 20, 1995. One of Alex Christopher's specialities is the new Denver airport, which is reputed to be a cover for a deep underground reptilian human base. It is certainly a strange place. The first time I spoke on these conspiracy subjects in the United States was in Denver in August 1996, and I'd landed at Denver Airport with no idea of its background. Even so, as soon as the plane landed, I'd felt a very strange energy, very weird and unpleasant. The airport was built at enormous cost on open land a long way from Denver, and it is full of Masonic symbols. There are also gargoyles, the winged reptile figures that you find on the stately homes of the reptilian aristocracy in Britain and on the churches and great cathedrals of Europe which were built by the Brotherhood Network. There are also gargoyles on a building in Dealey Plaza where President Kennedy was assassinated, and now they turn up again in a modern airport built on an alleged underground reptilian base. Gargoyles are symbols of the reptilians, and that is why you will find them at Denver Airport. The capstone or dedication stone at the airport is marked with the classic compass symbol of the Freemasons, and it stands in part of the terminal called the Great Hall, another Freemasonic term. On a wall is a grotesque mural full of malevolent symbolism, including 3 caskets with dead females in them, a Jewish girl, a Native American, and a black woman. Another girl is holding a Mayan tablet that tells of the destruction of civilization. A huge character, described as a green Darth Vader by Alex Christopher, stands over a destroyed city with a sword in his hand, and women are walking along a road holding dead babies. All the children of the world are depicted taking weapons from each country and handing them to a figure of a German boy with an iron fist and an anvil in his hand. Denver is apparently scheduled to be the headquarters of the western sector of the United States under the fascist global state called the New World Order, which is planned beyond the year 2000. Atlanta is said to be the center for the eastern sector, and I remember thinking some years ago how the design of Denver and Atlanta airports were so similar. Now I know why. Colorado is a major center for the New World Order, and the Queen of England, under another name, has been buying up land there. As you will see later, the British royal family are massively involved in this story, and so is the murder of Diana, Princess of Wales. One of Christopher's main contacts was a guy called Phil Schneider, the son of a German U-boat commander in World War II, who was commissioned to build a number of deep underground bases in the United States. I saw some of his lectures on video when he began to speak out publicly about the underground network of bases, cities, and tunnels throughout the United States. He later died in very suspicious circumstances which were meant to appear like suicide. Schneider said that Denver Airport was connected to a deep underground base that went down at least 8 levels. It included a 4.5 square mile underground city and a vast base, he said. Other contacts who have been underground at Denver Airport claim that there are large numbers of human slaves, many of them children, working there under the control of the reptilians. 2 of the bases that Phil Schneider claims to have helped to build are the infamous Area 51 in Nevada and Dulce in New Mexico, which is connected by the tunnel network to the Los Alamos National Laboratory. I have been to Los Alamos, and the vibes are simply horrible. After speaking about the reptilian involvement in human affairs on the Sightings radio show in the United States, I was sent an account by an army private stationed on the surface at Dulce. He realized there was something mighty odd about the place, but could not explain why. He remembered. Was working on a routine job when another of the young enlistees, a mechanic, came in with a small rush job he wanted welded at once. He had the print and proceeded to show me exactly what he wanted. We are both bending over the bench in front of the welder when, happened to look directly into his face. It seemed to suddenly become covered in a semi-transparent film or cloud. His features faded, and in their place appeared a thing with bulging eyes, no hair, and scales for skin. He later saw the same thing happen to a guard at the Dulce front gate. Other witnesses have spoken of seeing more reptilian chameleons working at the Madigan's Military Hospital near Fort Lewis, south of Seattle in Washington state. Again, I have spoken in that general area and found it all extremely strange, not least there being a New Age center close to Fort Lewis. Jason Bishop III has conducted extensive studies into the Dulce operation and established the involvement of a cartel that I expose in And the Truth Shall Set You Free, including organizations like the RAND Corporation, General Electric &T, Hughes Aircraft, Northrop Corporation, Sandia Corporation, Stanford Research Institute, Walsh Construction, the Bechtel Corporation, the Colorado School of Mines, and so on. Bechtel is a major link in the Brotherhood Reptile Network. There are at least 7 levels underground at Dulce, probably more, and Bishop has compiled accounts of workers there who have described what they have seen. Their accounts mirror the descriptions of the Anunnaki in the Sumerian texts as they interbred species to produce hideous hybrids of many types. This is what workers have said about Dulce. Level number 6 is privately called Nightmare Hall. It holds the genetic labs. Reports from workers who have seen bizarre experimentation are as follows. I have seen multi-legged humans that look like half human, half octopus. Also reptilian humans and furry creatures that have hands like humans and cry like a baby. It mimics human words. Also a huge mixture of lizard humans in cages. There are fish, seals, birds and mice that can hardly be considered those species. There are several cages and vats of winged humanoids, grotesque bat-like creatures. But 3.5 to 7 feet tall. Gargoyle-like beings and draco-reptoids. Level number 7 is worse, row after row of thousands of humans and human mixtures in cold storage. Here, too, are embryo storage vats of humanoids in various stages of development. One worker said. One frequently encountered humans in cages, usually dazed or drugged, but sometimes they cried and begged for help. We were told they were hopelessly insane, and involved in high-risk drug tests to cure insanity. We were told never to try to speak to them at all. At the beginning we believed that story. Finally, in 1978, a small group of workers discovered the truth. 42 This discovery apparently led to the Dulce Wars, a battle between humans and the extraterrestrials in 1979 when many scientists and military personnel were killed. Bill Schneider claimed to have taken part in a shootout with the aliens at Dulce in which he was hit by a laser gun which cut open his chest. Certainly he had a fantastic scar down his chest, as he revealed publicly. The base was closed for a time as a result of this conflict, but has since reopened. Another reptilian underground base is under Boynton Canyon in Sedona, Arizona. The center of the base is believed to be in the, appropriately named, Secret Canyon. Similar bases and underground cities exist across the world, and they are connected by tunnels with incredibly fast tube shuttles. The tunnels are built very quickly by technology like the subterrane, a nuclear-powered machine that melts the rock and shapes it into the tunnel walls. It was developed at Los Alamos. It is significant that underground nuclear tests were carried out in Nevada and New Mexico, the location of many deep underground facilities which have been connected with reptilians. Were those tests located there to open up fast underground caverns? Another theme I have had from many contacts is that the reptilians can feed off nuclear energy. What they look like, summarizing all the research I have read, the people I have met, and the accounts of those who claim to have experienced these reptile humanoids or reptilians, the following appears to be the case. There are many sub- and crossbreed races of the reptilians. Their elite is known by UFO researchers as the Draco. These are the big boys in every sense, and they are usually between 7 and 12 feet tall. They have wings which are flaps of skin supported by long ribs. The wings can be folded back against the body, and they are the origin of the term winged serpent. They are also the origin of the term fallen angels, and the winged gargoyles are symbolic of these Draco. The cape worn by Count Dracula is symbolic of these wings, and the character of Dracula in the Bram Stoker stories is said to be a fallen angel. The winged Draco are also known as the dragon race, and some of the ancient gods were described and depicted as birdmen. This could be one of the origins of the phoenix and eagle in brotherhood symbolism, as well as the more esoteric meanings. The biblical Satan is depicted as a reptilian, too. Some of the Draco reptilian hierarchy are apparently white or albino white and not the usual green or brown, and this connects with the description of the strange albino lizard humanoid in the building in Aurora, near Denver. The Draco are the royalty of the reptilians, and the highest caste are the albino whites, who apparently have conical horns midway between the brow and the top of the skull. This struck me immediately because the ancient gods and royalty were depicted as wearing a horned headdress, symbolic of these royal reptilians, I'm certain. Other species, like the soldier class and scientists, are known as reptoids. They don't have wings, but all of them are cold-blooded. Their scales are much larger on their backs, and they have 3 fingers with an opposing thumb. They have 3 toes with a 4th towards the side of their ankle, and their claws are short and blunt. They have large, cat-like eyes which glow red and a mouth that looks more like a slit. Some have eyes which are described as black, and others are white with flame-colored vertical pupils. Again, this is what the lady described in the Aurora case. The reptilians are 5 to 12 feet tall, and they are the giants described so widely in the ancient legends and records. Some have tails, others do not. One of their other planets of influence long ago is reckoned to have been Mars, and so were reptile crossbreeds among the white Martians even before they came here. Zechariah Sitchin also speculates that the Anunnaki went to Mars before coming to Earth. This would certainly fit the picture, and it could well be that the white Martians in Brian Desborough's scenario and the Anunnaki have long been genetically connected. a high priestess of the Brotherhood hierarchy who has broken out of their clutches, at least at the time I spoke with her, says that the reptilian Anunnaki invaded Mars long ago and the white race of Martians eventually left that planet for Earth. The Anunnaki on Mars followed, she said, although I have no doubt that some are there now in underground bases. Whenever one of the NASA Mars probes is in danger of letting the public see something they shouldn't, the link mysteriously goes down or the probe disappears altogether. What is without question is that the white race, whatever its origin, has been the main vehicle of the Anunnaki crossbreeding program for the takeover of planet Earth. Researchers believe that the reptilians are the controllers of the so-called Greys, the classic extraterrestrial figure of modern times with their big black eyes. The Greys feature in most of the abduction accounts. Jason Bishop III in his writings on this subject says that the hierarchy of control is Draco, winged reptilian, Draco, non-winged Greys, humans. There also appears to be a reptilian alliance with some other extraterrestrial groups. It is suggested that human sacrifice to the gods in the ancient world, particularly of children, was for the benefit of reptilians who demanded these rituals. A trait of the reptile brain is ritualism. I am sure this is true, and it will be extremely relevant in the latter part of this book. At the moment of death by sacrifice, a form of adrenaline surges through the body and accumulates at the base of the brain and is, apparently, most potent in children. This is what the reptilians and their crossbreeds want, it is said, and they certainly feed off human blood and flesh. These ancient sacrifices were literally to the gods, the Anunnaki reptilians, and they continue today. The common theme of all research into the reptilians is that they are emotionless and without sentiment and, at the fourth dimensional level, they feed off the energy of low vibrational human emotions like fear, guilt and aggression. When we emit such emotions, their energy can't be seen in this world because it resonates to the lower fourth dimensional frequency and there it is absorbed by the reptilians. The more of these emotions that can be stimulated, the more energy the reptilians have to work with. Thus we have the encouragement of wars, human genocide, the mass slaughter of animals, sexual perversions which create highly charged negative energy, and black magic ritual and sacrifice which takes place on a scale that will stagger those who have not studied the subject. Sons of the Gods, the reptilian breeding program appears to have produced an Anunnaki human hybrid, Adam, around 200,000 to 300,000 years ago. I'm sure other extraterrestrial races have also interbred with humanity to produce the glorious variety of Earth peoples, but I am focusing here on the reptilian group because of their desire to control and manipulate human affairs. Clearly, the farther you go back the murkier the story becomes, but there is enough supporting and cross-referencing evidence to present the themes of what happened. The more I look at this, the more it is clear to me that what the reptilians did on Mars they have done here. They infiltrated the home population through interbreeding and took the place over. It seems to me that there were already reptile Aryan bloodlines among the Martians when they came to Earth. One of the main locations for the Anunnaki and the Martians or Aryans, particularly during and after the Venus cataclysm of around 4800 BC, were the mountains of Turkey, Iran and Kurdistan, and it was from here that they and their hybrids re-emerged when the waters receded. It was they who created the instant advanced civilizations in the lowlands of Sumer, Egypt, Babylon and the Indus Valley. A particular center for the Anunnaki reptilians would seem to have been the Caucasus Mountains, and this is an area that will appear again and again in this story. I feel there was a major breeding program in this region, probably underground, which produced a very large number of hybrid reptile-human crossbreeds. One area of research that is highly relevant to this region are the number of people with Rh-negative or rhesus-negative blood. Often rhesus-negative babies turn blue immediately after birth. This is the origin of the term blue bloods for royal bloodlines and other terms like true blue. It is speculated that the blue bloodlines could be of Martian descent and from wherever the Martian bloodlines came from before that. Far more white people are Rh-negative than blacks or Asians. The genes of the albino white royal Draco appear to have been used to create the royal reptile-human hybrid bloodlines which have been used to rule the world since ancient times. These were the ones known to the ancients as the demigods, who were given the task of middlemen, controlling the population and running the world according to the agenda of their reptile masters. What is clear is that while the Anunnaki interbred with many Earth races, the white race has been their main vehicle for taking over the planet, and the royal Draco at the top of their hierarchy are albino white. Significantly, when you look at ancient accounts, many of their hybrid creations had blonde hair and blue eyes. A major change would seem to have taken place soon after the Venus upheavals because the Ubaid culture, 5000 to 5000 BC, in what is now Iraq, worshipped gods who were depicted as lizard humanoids, while the Sumerians 4000 to 5000 BC, who lived in the same area, depict their gods as very human. This change, and the crossbreeding program in the Caucasus region, are fundamentally connected, I'm sure. The Anunnaki human crossbreed elite was described by the Sumerians, and there are many other accounts of the interbreeding of extraterrestrials and humans, or the gods and sky people interbreeding with humanity. This is most famously noted in Genesis, where it says, "When men began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose." The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. Genesis 6:1-4. According to the translations of Zechariah Sitchin, the word Nephilim relates to those who descended, while others say it means the fallen ones or those who have fallen. The word renown in that passage in Genesis is translated from the Sumerian word Shem. This has been translated in the Bible as relating to name, as in making a name for yourself as a man of renown. Sitchin says the real meaning of Shem is sky vehicle. He says it comes from the root, shu-mu, which means that which is a mu, and a mu is a flying craft, he says. So men of renown becomes men or people of the sky vehicles. It was these who interbred with human women. This passage in Genesis, I would suggest, tells of the interbreeding between the extraterrestrials or interterrestrials with humans to produce the reptile-human hybrids. The term sons of God in fact comes from the Hebrew, Beni ha-Elohim, which really translates as sons of the gods. The early offspring of these genetic encounters were the giants of legend, and there are many records of such hybrids being born. There are numerous accounts throughout the ancient world, on every continent, of a giant race, and the biblical Goliath could well have been symbolic of these people. The Native Americans have many tales of the star people coming down from the skies to breed with human women, and Alex Christopher says that a common denominator in the abduction of humans by reptilians in the United States appears to relate to the person's bloodline, particularly those that go back to Native Americans or ancient Indians. The Hopi, you will recall, speak of originating within the earth. The Ethiopian text, the Kebra Nagast, Nagas were Indian shape-shifting serpent gods, is thousands of years old, and it refers to the enormous size of the babies produced from the sexual or genetic unions of humans and the gods. It tells how the daughters of Cain, with whom the angels, extrators trials, had conceived, were unable to bring forth their children, and they died. It describes how some of these giant babies were delivered by caesarean section. Having split open the bellies of their mothers, they came forth by their navels. Degree in the ancient Hebrew text, the Book of Noah, and its derivative, the Book of Enoch, a strange birth is described of a non-human child, who turns out to be Noah of great flood fame. References to this also appear in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the records of the Essene community in Palestine 2,000 years ago, which included much material from the Book of Enoch. The strange child the texts describe is the son of Lamech. He is said to be unlike a human being and more like the children of the angels in heaven. Lamech's child, Noah, is described as white-skinned and blonde-haired with eyes that made the whole house shine like the sun. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed beings with laser-like eyes is a description for mysterious people or gods which spans thousands of years to the present day and appear in cultures across the world. Lamech questions his wife about the father of the child. Behold, thought then within my heart that conception was due to the watchers and the holy ones, and to the Nephilim. And my heart was troubled within me because of this child. 47 In the Shan or Book of Kings, the legendary history of Iran completed in 1010 AD by the Arab poet, Ferdowsi, he describes the birth of a baby called Zal, the son of a king called Sam. Again, the king is horrified by the unearthly appearance of his child, who has a very large body as clean as silver, hair as white as an old man's and like snow, and a face compared with the sun. Sam calls his son a demon child, a child of the Devas, the Watchers. Like the patriarchs of the Old Testament, the Iranians appear to have an aversion to children born with extremely white features. And who is said to be extremely white? Albino white? The royal hierarchy of the Draco. The text of the Shan says of Zal, no human being of this earth could give such a monster birth, he must be of the demon race, though human still in form and face, if not a demon, he at least appears a party-colored beast. Number 8 Zal later marries a foreign princess called Rudaba, the daughter of Mehrib, the king of Karbil, and a descendant of the serpent king, Zaak, who was said to have ruled Iran for 1,000 years. This was one of the reptilian bloodlines, and in keeping with this, Rudaba is described _figure 5, the ancient caduceus, as tall as a teak tree, ivory white etc., the familiar features symbol of the modern medical of the Watcher human offspring. These descriptions we abound for the royal lines of Iran and the Near East, as do the twin spirals of DNA, or perhaps their comparison with trees because of their great height, representing a wavelength or frequency. It seems from their texts that you required the Nephilim Watcher physical characteristics to qualify to be king. This, no doubt, is the origin of the divine right of Ki Gies, the right to rule by virtue of your family bloodline, a system which continued when these lines expanded into Europe. Even the British title of Sir, conferred by the Queen on her selected subjects, comes from an ancient snake goddess, reptilian, called Sir, which relates to the Anunnaki goddess, Ninlil or Ninkarsag, in the Sumerian tablets. Her husband, Enlil, was called the Splendid Serpent of the Shining Eyes. His brother, Enki, was also known as a serpent, and his emblem was two entwined serpents, the symbol of his cult center at Eridu and of the modern medical profession. The symbol is known as the caduceus, see Figure 5. This information comes from the Sumerian tablets as translated by Zechariah Sitchin and described in his books. Therefore I found it staggering that Sitchin personally told me there was no evidence of a serpent race and advised me to cease my research into such matters. The idea that there is no evidence is simply ludicrous, so why would Sitchin say that to me? He was adamant that I should end this line of research. I have absolutely no doubt that the Anunnaki and the Watchers are the same reptilian race, the serpents with the shining eyes identified by Christian and Barbara O'Brien in their work, Genius of the Few. Author and researcher, Andrew Collins, says he has a Canaanite copper figurine depicting one of their gods of around 2000 BC. Registered sign. It has a serpentine neck and a head shaped like the hood of a cobra which curls over to form a snake-like headdress. Over the thousands of years since these royal reptile-human hybrid bloodlines were created, they have become more integrated into the general populaphone and less physically obvious, but the basic genetic structure remains, and the Brotherhood maintains very detailed genetic records of who has it and who doesn't. Christian and Barbara O'Brien say in Genius of the Few that if the Anunnaki had interbred with humanity hundreds of thousands of years ago and then interbred with them again about 30,000 years ago, the result of the second interbreeding would be a genetic structure that was 75% Anunnaki and 25% human. Think there was another breeding program far more recently, after the Venus flood of about 7,000 years ago. These later bloodlines would have been even more Anunnaki than previous versions, of course. These are the reptilian crossbreeds who run the world today, and it's this profusion of reptilian genes which allows such people to shape-shift into reptilians and back into an apparently human form. These bloodlines also have the ability to produce an extremely powerful hypnotic stare, just like a snake hypnotizing its prey, and this is the origin of the term giving someone the evil eye. All this is the real reason for the obsession with blood and the interbreeding of the blue blood families and their offshoots. This is why since the earliest times of known history, the blue blood heirs married their half-sisters and cousins, just as the Anunnaki did according to the Sumerian tablets. The most important gene in this succession is passed on by the female line, so the choice of female sexual partner has been vital to them. It is highly significant that the Serpent King bloodline should originate from Iran because it is from this region of Iran, Kurdistan, Armenia, Turkey and the Caucasus Mountains, that these reptile-human bloodlines emerged to take over the world. A Brotherhood insider, a Russian, said there was a massive vortex, an interdimensional gateway, in the Caucasus Mountains where the extraterrestrials entered this dimension. That would explain a great deal. The name Iran comes from the earlier Ariana or Aran, which means land of the Aryas or Aryans. Still today there are two distinct races in Kurdistan, the olive-skinned of medium height with dark eyes, and the much taller, white-skinned people, often with blue eyes. You will note that these traits were considered the master race by the Nazis, and this was because the Nazis knew the history and the connection with the reptilians. Andrew Collins in his book, From the Ashes of Angels, presents compelling evidence that the biblical Garden of Eden was high up in this region of Iran, Kurdistan, and, of course, the theme of the serpent is at the heart of the Eden story. In neighbor MG Media, the kings were known by the Iranians as Mar, which means snake. In Persian, Mars equals snake. They were called the Dragon Dynasty of Media, or the descendants of the dragon. I have no doubt that the reptilian Draco interbred with humans to produce crossbreeds within the white race, and, indeed, there are many people around the world today who claim to have bred with reptilians. By 2200 BC, the royal court of the dragon had been founded in Egypt by the priests of Mendes, and this still continues today 4,000 years later, as the imperial and royal court of the dragon sovereignty, now headquartered in Britain. Some people call this the Brotherhood of the Snake. The early kings of Sumer, Egypt, and later, Israel, were anointed at their coronation with the fat of the dragon, which was the fat of the sacred crocodile. The croc was known in Egypt as a mess, and from this comes the Hebrew term Messiah, which means anointed one. The kings of the succession were also known as dragons, and all this symbolism relates to the knowledge that these royal families were the bloodlines of the reptile-human crossbreeds. When many kingdoms joined together in battle, they appointed a king of kings, and he was known as the Great Dragon or Draco. The famous Celtic title, Pendragon, is a version of this. Kingship actually originates from the word kin or blood relative, and kinship became kingship. Just to emphasize the point about the reptile bloodlines here, the name the Egyptians gave to their sacred mess or crocodile was Draco. This also became a symbol of the Egyptian therapeutate and their branch in Israel called the Essens, and it was represented as a sea serpent or Bestia Neptunus by the royal Merovingians and their descendants in France. The same tribe, all of them. If you look in the picture section, you will see an ancient Egyptian depiction of a god on the temple wall at Saqqara. It is a non-human reptilian figure with what appear to be wings. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed beings with eyes like lasers are still being reported. An American friend told me of an experience her father had in the early 1970s. They lived in Turkey at the time, where he worked at a listening post for American military intelligence. He came home one night in a terrible state. When asked what was wrong, he just mumbled, "The world is not like we think it is." Although he rarely drank, he asked for a scotch, and then another. As he relaxed, he told his daughter of a communication he had taken that day from the pilot of a plane which was stationed at the Turkish base. The pilot reported that he was flying near the North Pole when suddenly his engine stopped and all the electrical systems switched off. The plane then gently lowered itself vertically to the ground, and to his disbelief a mountain top opened up and the plane came to rest inside. What he saw was a scene straight from James Bond. He got out of the plane wondering what the hell was going on, and he was met by tall, blonde-haired people with pearl-colored skin and bluish-purple eyes which appeared electrically charged somehow, like laser eyes. They all wore long white gowns, and, perhaps significantly, this is how the Central South America god known as Quetzalcoatl was described. They also wore a Maltese cross medallion on a chain. The pilot's memory was hazy about what happened after he first met Old Blue Eyes, but he remembered walking into a room and seeing a group of these beings sitting around a conference table. Eventually, he was taken back to his plane, and as it rose from the mountain his engines and electronics restarted. Now, having heard the descriptions of these beings by a modern U.S. pilot, look at how the Book of Enoch describes the Watchers. And there appeared to me 2 men very tall, such as have never seen on earth. And their faces shone like the sun, and their eyes were like burning lamps. Their hands were brighter than snow. This would connect also with the ancient description of gods as the Shining Ones. There is certainly much more to our history than we are being told, and much more happening on this planet today than most people could even begin to believe. Many extraterrestrial races, not only the reptilians, operate in and around the Earth on this or higher dimensions. Beings from Orion and the Pleiades are among many other races reported by abductees and researchers to be interacting with humans. From what I hear from Brotherhood insiders who have seen some of these extraterrestrials, the Orions, a cruel but beautiful race according to my contacts, have some kind of alliance with the reptilians. I am sure that the biblical angels were the Watchers, the reptilians, winged and otherwise. The very term sons of the gods is translated in the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Old Testament, as angelos, angels. It appears from my research that there are different reptilian factions, those who are more positive in their attitude to humanity and those who wish to dominate and control. They both became known as Watchers or angels, the latter as fallen angels. It could well be that the legends of Saint Michael casting the dragon onto the earth for the final battle and Saint George defeating the dragon relate to the long-standing conflict between the genuine white Martians and the reptilian Anunnaki. Saint Michael and Saint George are ancient Phoenician heroes from the very region of the world where the Anunnaki instigated their crossbreeding program and, for a long time, operated openly as reptilians. In the last book of the Bible, the Book of Revelation, we see the clear connection made between the being known as Satan and the serpent or reptile, and the great dragon was cast down, the old serpent, he that is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world, he was cast down to earth, and his angels were cast down with him. And he laid hold on the dragon, the old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and cast him into the abyss, and shut it, and sealed it over him, that he should deceive the nations no more. In a Dead Sea Scroll fragment translated by the Hebrew scholar, Robert Eisenman, there is a description of a watcher called Belial, Bel, who is described as the prince of darkness and the king of evil. He is said to be terrifying in his appearance, like a serpent with a visage like a viper. One of the main angelic groups in Hebrew lore is the seraphim or fiery serpents, and the watchers are very much connected to the description of serpents. In the Persian teachings they also talk of a being they describe as the old serpent having 2 feet, just as the Book of Enoch features walking serpents. When you consider that the Draco royal leadership is said to be up to 12 feet tall and white-skinned, indeed albino white, whiter than snow, it again relates to the very white skin of the giant watcher human hybrid babies described in the Book of Enoch and elsewhere. And, I should emphasize, the birth of the human watcher child in the Book of Enoch is that of Noah. If this be so, Noah is, in fact, a reptile-human hybrid, and many peoples have sought to claim descendants from Noah, descendants from the reptilian watchers and Anunnaki. In Hebrew myth, the Nephilim are described as Aim, which means devastators or serpents. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, Noah is described as looking like the children of the fallen angels of heaven, whose conception was due to the watchers and to the Nephilim. In Jewish lore, Eve is seen as the ancestral mother of the Nephilim and associated with the Hebrew words meaning life and snake. Eve was, of course, tempted by the serpent according to Old Testament myth and other sources. In chapter 69 of the Book of Enoch we find that among the watchers who revealed the secrets to humans was Gadriel, the fallen angel who has been identified with tempting Eve. The Book of Enoch was banned by the Roman Church, which sought to deny the earlier Christian belief in the existence of flesh and blood angels and fallen angels occupying physical bodies and interbreeding with humans. This was to stop the masses understanding the true situation. But the Freemasons, who control the Roman Catholic Church today along with other Brotherhood offshoots, have always looked upon Enoch as one of their legendary founders. The very name Enoch means initiated. The theme of the fallen angels giving forbidden secrets to humanity can be found in the Book of Enoch and other works. Among these tellers of secrets is Azazel, who taught the art of metal making, and Shemyaza, who taught the magical arts. These tales spawned many later heroes based on this theme, the most famous of which is the Greek god, Prometheus, who is said to have stolen fire, knowledge, from the gods and given it to humans, selected humans. A gold statue of Prometheus stands in the Rockefeller Center in New York. The Rockefellers are reptilian full-bloods and therefore are fully aware of the true significance and background of the Prometheus legend. Incidentally, the watcher called Azazel is the origin of the goat head in satanic ritual and the term scapegoat. According to the Book of Leviticus, the Israelites would sacrifice 2 male goats at Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. One was offered to God and the other to Azazel. The priest placed both hands on the head of the Azazel goat and confessed the sins of the people. The goat would then be taken into the wilderness and plunged over a cliff, symbolizing the fallen angel Azazel, who was seen as bound and chained in the wilderness, the abyss in the language of the Book of Revelation, which I think is imprisonment in the lower 4th dimension. From this comes the ancient theme of the scapegoat, which manifested in one form as the symbolic story of Jesus's. The goat head of Azazel, a fallen angel reptilian, is symbolized by the inverted pentagram of Satanism. We can debate the details, and we should, because there is a vast amount of information still to be uncovered. I have an endless stream of questions myself. But there are some emerging themes. Extraterrestrial races have been visiting the Earth with varying intent for probably millions of years, and their interbreeding has created the many racial streams. In the distant past there have been highly advanced technological civilizations based on this extraterrestrial knowledge, a golden age as the